Did you know that ticket prices can actually go down right before the game? That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time tracks ticket prices in real time from thousands of trusted sellers, then shows you all the best deals. So we can get tickets at the last minute for up to 60% off. Download Game Time now.
Hey folks, and welcome into the Michigan Report. This is post-game edition. I'm Cam Rogers. We got the Michigan football insider himself, James Yoder, Skyping in right now live. The Michigan Wolverines falling to the Penn State Nittany Lions in Happy Valley, 42-13. Folks, we are completely live in this program, so do throw in your comments. We want to know your analysis about this Wolverines team right now. James, we need your instant reaction right here, right now. Your thoughts.
Yeah, Cam, I wish I could be mad at this point, but you guys probably didn't expect to hear from me this soon after the game, but I'm not even mad. I'm just like befuddled, confused. I don't know what team I saw out there for most of the game, except after that second Penn State touchdown. They were going to drive for a third and maybe blowing it out, maybe getting to this final score a little faster. Michigan gets the interception, puts together a couple touchdowns, has some creativity on offense, and then after that, we saw nothing out of this team. We saw terrible defensive execution. We saw no ability to make adjustments in the second half against that number 5, whose name's escaping me, or Barkley, or McSorley running out of the backfield. Guys like Mike McCray, Tyree Cannell had made no plays, out of position all day. So the defense really let me down, Cam, to say the least. I thought the offense did enough for about a quarter and a half to win the game, but they didn't show up in the second half, so it didn't matter what the defense was going to do. The offense was terrible. This team needs a complete retooling at this point, or this is 8-4, probably 7-5. They'll drop one of those 3 middle games that we lead up to Wisconsin with, though.
So the Wolverines fall to 5-2. They're now 2-2 in conference. The Nittany Lions are now 7-0 and destined for a college football playoff berth. James, this game seemed to me it had to come down to that front seven with Hurst, with Winovich, with Gary. They had to win up front, and then maybe perhaps some good clutch kicking from Nordine. That game plan didn't happen. That's what I expected that needed to happen for Michigan to actually win this game. Trace McSorley had a great game. Saquon Barkley balled out as well. And that defense, as you said, definitely disappointed. And when you disappoint on the defensive side and you're putting all that pressure on O'Korn in that offense, that's just not a winning formula.
It's not a winning formula at all. And I do want to say that I thought the defensive line played a pretty decent game. They never really got a hold of the quarterback, but it was the linebackers in the secondary kind of next after that first wave that really disappointed. I can't blame this game on the defensive line. They did enough to hurry McSorley, make him feel pressure all day. A lot of big hits in the first half, but I just want to point out a few guys. I hate to single players out. These are just college guys, but we've got Mike McCray. He had an awful game. I don't think there's a role for him on this team going forward. And, this is the only returning starter that Michigan has on this defense. He's not fast enough. He got exposed today. Tyree Cannell, exposed. And then a guy like Josh Metellus, who has played really good the last this whole year, really didn't show up today. So there's 3 or 4 guys in defense that I think Michigan really needs to consider replacing and trying something else.
And one of the instant reactions that we have here is in regards to the defense and the scheme of it right now. And you saw a lot of man out there tonight, and perhaps that's the reason why Saquon Barkley found a lot of lanes down the field and created good plays. Do you think maybe Michigan might explore a little more zone, a little more cover 2, a little more conservative to keep plays in front of you, or is that not the Michigan way?
It's not the Don Brown way, but they went to zone for the second half of the first quarter and almost the entire second quarter, and they went back to man, and McSorley puts one in the end zone right before the half. That was disappointing. And then it seemed like they played man again the entire second half, and what Penn State was doing is putting Barkley out wide, then bringing him in, so they got to figure out if Michigan was in zone or man right away. Once they knew that, they called a play to exploit it. It was either Barkley and McSorley running that read option, or it was getting their tight end number 88, who was phenomenal, by the way, or number 5 in one-on-one coverage, either over the middle or one-on-one deep. But I'll tell you this. Trace McSorley throws a phenomenal deep ball. I mean, I thought it was just last year he had really good receivers who made those jumps and bailed him out, but he puts the ball right where you need it. I just can't wait till Michigan gets a quarterback like that.
Envy through the air, if you will. Hey, folks, Cam Rogers alongside the Michigan football insider himself, James Yoder. We are indeed presented by the Game Time app. Get all of those last-minute tickets for concerts, heck, the MLB playoffs, maybe a Michigan game next week against Rutgers, whatever you feel. Download the Game Time app or go on to chatsports.com/tickets to get up to 60% off there, James.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no better place than Game Time for tickets next week, because if you pay anything close to face value to see them pay Rutgers next week, you're burning your money. You'll probably get them for $3 in Game Time. So go ahead, chatsports.com/tickets. Get your $1 Michigan tickets 1 week from today.
And, of course, we are completely live here, ladies and gentlemen, so keep those comments rolling in. We have been showing some of them on the broadcast here, and let's get into these highlights. What exactly transpired in this game? This one, of course, was in Pennsylvania. It was a game day game, college game day on site. Let's get to it. We open up with a big Saquon Barkley, the front runner, you would assume, for the Heisman Trophy. He's going to go all the way for the touchdown, and sometimes it can be about setting a tone in a football game. The Nittany Lions certainly did that. Next drive, Penn State at that 20. It's an option play. McSorley is going to give it to Barkley, and Barkley is going to find space and find the end zone again. Penn State now up 14-0. Michigan wasn't quite dead, though. David Long with a very nice interception here to take it into the end of Michigan territory as they punch it in here with their guy, Karan Higdon, and that puts Michigan back into it. Then the next drive, Ty Isaac gets into the fold here. He'll find a nice crease on that left side up that A gap. He'll find the end zone, and all of a sudden, Michigan not too far behind. Penn State would score a quick one before the half. On the other side of halftime here, it's Trace McSorley again diving for the pylon. Penn State up 15 now. Michigan looking to get back in it, but Penn State's defense really came to play here. They're going to strip John O'Korn, and we're going to show you the replay here as that ferocious front for the Nittany Lions really got after John O'Korn, and really that was just a microcosm of the night for Michigan. Here is Penn State again. Barkley with a wild catch for a touchdown, his third of the night, and that would be that. The Penn State Nittany Lions 42, Michigan 13, and in that fourth quarter, James, it really seemed as though Penn State wanted to stomp on the Wolverines' throats, perhaps reminiscent of the blowout victory for Michigan's favor last year. Maybe a little revenge type deal there as we bring up what is only appropriate here on the Michigan Football Report. Just press the angry button, folks, because that is where we are at this point in the season, James.
Yeah, I got to get my phone out and press the angry button myself, Cam, because it's the only thing you can say. And I guess, I don't know where to go from here. I didn't really truly, in my heart of hearts, think Michigan would win big or anything, but I did give a prediction of 10-6 that I thought that was probably about what it would be. I just didn't think that Penn State would score enough against Michigan. I don't think they blow them out. I didn't think what happened would transpire, and that's because I've been so impressed with Don Brown's defense. And I'm just wondering if Penn State has a better offensive coordinator. We rave about Don Brown, taking Michigan's defense to the next level the last 2 seasons, but I don't know if Jim Harbaugh doesn't need to go out and get his own Don Brown on offense, just like James Franklin did at Penn State. This is their offensive coordinator's only second year, Moorhead, only second year with the team. We saw after 5 or 6 games last year how that offense exploded, and we've seen now. I mean, now they are, I would say, the front runner for the college football playoff. But let's remember this about Penn State. They go to Ohio State next week, which in my mind is the game of the year so far in college football. They go, and then the week after they go Michigan State. So they've got a long way before we can give them a playoff berth. But this program's for real. This team's for real. I was kind of wondering if they would go for it, which they did, try and put 50 on Michigan. I really kind of wanted to see, what does James Franklin have in him? Would he have scored that touchdown at the end? Would he have gone for 2 to actually give 50 against Michigan to kind of stick it to Jim Harbaugh? After Harbaugh definitely ran up the score last year. Michigan was not trying to run the clock out in 2016. They were trying to score deep in the fourth quarter. So. With that, I mean, I don't know where to go from here. The offense is absolutely absurd. I think there's some serious questions about the quarterback we should talk about. And, it's just an average season at this point. There's no way they're going to beat Wisconsin or Ohio State, not even close. So at best, you're looking at 8-4, year 3, and going into next season, unless something drastic happens with a guy like Brandon Peters, or you rip that red shirt off of Dylan McCaffrey, you're going into it with year 3 under Wilton Spade as a fifth-year senior, or a guy like Brandon Peters, who apparently can't throw a ball more than 9 yards, or he'd be the starting quarterback. Or a redshirt freshman who has had no college football playing experience. So I just think the future of this program looks a lot cloudier than it did just 3 weeks ago, when it looked as stellar as you can imagine for a football team after 2 years and a few games of a football coach.
Well, there certainly is a dark cloud over Jim Harbaugh right now, as we have a weigh-in here for the folks at home. Is Jim Harbaugh underachieving as a head coach this season, James? Of course, when you lose your starting quarterback, number one, that's already a tough hit as it is to really pick it up where you left off when you have a backup quarterback in for an offense that, let's face it, is a little devoid of superstars right now. We saw today that Saquon Barkley, Trace McSorley, a good enough quarterback, they made the plays, whereas John O'Korn did not make the plays down the field needed to score as many points, of course, as the Penn State Nittany Lions. So, James, back to Jim Harbaugh. Any doubts about him right now?
I mean, I don't think there's any doubts that he's going to be the coach as long as he wants. But I think there's some doubts. I just don't know if I see – let me ask you this question, Cam.
Sure.
We brought you in as host because you're a great host, but I wouldn't call you a Michigan homer by any means. But have you ever seen Jim Harbaugh in all the years you've watched him coach? His brother, John. They get animated. Have you ever seen him go 4 or 5 games in a row and show almost no emotion? I don't know if he's lost something. Is he having personal problems off the field? But he doesn't show emotion with the quarterback. One thing that just stood out to me before the game, I was kind of like, I don't like the sign of this. If you think every time they've shown Harbaugh in his entire coaching career do the thing where he pounds on the quarterback's shoulder pads, hits him on the helmet, it looked like you wanted to run through a wall for that guy. And I compared what he did to O'Korn, what I would do to like a 5-year-old kid. Give him a little tap and just say, get out there. It was like he just half-assed it. And so I don't know if Jim Harbaugh's gotten worse as a coach, but I just don't see the fire from him this season. I don't know why. Does he know this team doesn't have it? Is something going on that we don't know about? Is the staff in turmoil? I can't say. But the guy in the coaching, the sideline, is not the guy Michigan's seen for the last 2 years, isn't the one that went to 3 straight NFC title games or took Stanford to a 12-1 season just 7 years ago. So I don't know what to say. Oops, I pull up my headset. That's how fired up I am, Cam. I'm just ripping headsets out here. But something's got to change. I fear that next week is going to be one of the most somber 12 o'clock games in Ann Arbor history, and Michigan will win like 13-3 against Rutgers, and it just could spiral out of effect. This reminds me a lot of that 2013 Brady Hoke season where they got off to a good start, 4-0, 5-0, lost a game against, it was Michigan State, and they got crushed against Michigan State. Thankfully, Michigan didn't hear. But it kind of spiraled out of control, ended up losing 6 games that year. I don't know if we're on the same path. That was year 3 for Hoke. This could be the same thing for Jim Harbaugh. So if they don't win by 40 against Rutgers next week, I think you're probably going to guarantee this is a 7-5 team.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one thing that we can gather about coaches and their intensity is through the cutaways during the broadcast, kind of seeing how they operate and things like that. And you're absolutely right. I know Harbaugh myself, being a Ravens fan, knowing John Harbaugh very well. You know Jim Harbaugh very well. They're fiery guys. And it's clear to Jim right now that, he does not have a lot of faith in this team to really make any noise at all in the Big Ten. And let's face it, Michigan is behind the 8 ball now. They're 2-2 in conference at this juncture. They're behind the likes of Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, etc. out there in the East. So, sometimes when you're used to success, like Jim Harbaugh has been in the last couple of years, and now you're getting a taste of adversity, that's when things kind of change and your mentality and your I should say passion kind of decreases a little bit. So with that, talking about Jim Harbaugh, let's talk about the quarterback position here as we bring up a reaction poll, James. Who should actually start next week? So give us a heart, folks, for John O'Korn, a laughing face for Dylan McCaffrey, a wow face for we should blow them out in general, doesn't matter, and an angry face for Brandon Peters. James, at this juncture, why don't you just roll a dice and see who pops up? I mean, at this point, I really don't know who's better than who.
So at this point, if it's not Peters, and he didn't get any playing time really at all this season, I think he's got one series, maybe against Purdue when they're up by a couple scores. If it's not Peters, that means the coaches have no confidence in him. And I've heard rumblings that he was going to potentially come in today if Michigan was not getting it done. That didn't happen. Even though they're down 4 scores late in the game, we didn't see him. Is Rutgers the right team to start a new guy? It absolutely is. And if they, so what I'm saying is, like, if they don't put in Peters, when you saw what O'Korn does, like, it's not like we have to guess what O'Korn can do. We see what he does. He is not anywhere close to a Power 5 conference quarterback. He is the worst consistent starting quarterback in Michigan football history. No guy has ever started 3 games in a row that bad in the history of the program. I'm not even going back. I'm going back to 1905, right, when they were winning national titles. 127 years, the worst quarterback we've ever had. Now, does that say Peters is worse than the worst quarterback? And this is the most important recruit in Jim Harbaugh's life. He gets it wrong in Peters, obviously. So, with all that being said, I think it's got to be Dylan McCaffrey. I don't think there's any other way. What are you holding his red shirt on? In the hopes that he's bad enough that he sticks around for a 5th year and in 4 seasons from now that he wouldn't take over the reins and go pro early after his 3rd season or 4th season? Like, what are you holding his red shirt on for at this point? Your programming is spiraling out of control, and I don't think there's anything I've seen that's going to change it. I mean, the defense could shut teams out, and they'll still find a way to lose with this offense, as crazy as that might sound. But let me throw this one at you outside of the quarterback. I just want to kind of walk through the last 4 Michigan head coaches and their 3rd season as head coach. Now, all under different circumstances, they come in the program. We had 1997, Lloyd Carr, 12-0 in his 3rd year, national champion, 3-0 versus Ohio State. And these weren't cupcakes Ohio State teams. Every single Ohio State team he beat was ranked in the top 5 when they played, right? Not at the beginning of the year. When they played them, 3 straight years, beat a top 5 Ohio State team, right? Okay, 3rd year national title, Heisman Trophy winner. The program was humming. I get that. 3rd year for Rich Rodriguez, 7-6, he got fired, okay? 3rd year for Brady Hoke, also 3rd year for Brady Hoke, 8-5, okay, 8-5 for Hoke, and people were calling for his head. So what I'm saying here is that if Jim Harbaugh slips up in one of these last 3 weeks or these next 3 games against teams like Rutgers and Minnesota, if there is a loss in there, Cam, I do think there is that you start after questioning whether this is the right guy for the program. Does he still have it? The Jim Harbaugh I watched and foamed over to get him as the Michigan football coach for 7 seasons between Stanford and the 49ers. I don't know where that guy is. He's not. I just don't see any offensive tenacity. He lost. I'll tell you what. This is just kind of an interesting thing. At the time, you thought that it was no big deal, but the 2 NFL coaches that didn't have a history with Harbaugh, who have left the program, Tyrone Wheatley Sr., Ty Wheatley's dad, who was a great Michigan running back, and then Jed Fish, who was an offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, who was the passing game coordinator. Both those guys left the staff in this offseason. He backfilled them with 2 of his guys, his son and the old Stanford offensive coordinator who was at the Browns, Pep Hamilton. Those guys are underperforming big time. And so if Harbaugh doesn't make some changes on this staff, whether it's immediately or in the offseason, then I just don't know where the future of this program lies. It's not winning multiple national titles, which I would have guaranteed just 12 months ago. Oh, yeah, sure. 3 or 4 national titles in the next 10 years under Harbaugh. I don't see it at this point.
Well, we don't know the future of the Michigan football program right now, but we do know the future in terms of who they are playing. And, James, it could actually be a situation where they are just essentially playing out the string until they hit Wisconsin. You got Rutgers next week, as you said. Then you got Minnesota. Then they go to College Park to take on the Maryland Terrapins. So that's going to be a big test of mental strength for the Wolverines. Jim Harbaugh, I'm talking coaching staff down to the players, James. These guys are going to have to saddle up and play like they can play against teams that are obviously inferior to them. And it's going to be a big mental test after this big defeating loss against Penn State in Happy Valley on College game day. How do they bounce back? It's going to show their professionalism or lack thereof in these next few weeks.
Well, I mean, either you lose the team and you start building for next year, you bench guys, you start playing freshmen. Either you lose confidence in your team and the guys start rumbling that they're getting mad and factions starting the team, or you find it as a us versus the world. Every single pundit, if this would have been a close game, which it looked like for most of the game until it started getting away from them at the end of the third quarter, if the final score, Cam, was 24-16 or 24-20 or 28, if it was like 1 or 1.5 scores, I would have said that I think people would have been like, okay, Michigan played a good game, because I think they did show some adversity. You know, they powered through adversity by coming back after giving up 2 touchdowns early. And I actually started feeling good when they were down 14-13. I'm like, Penn State had to use a trick play to get a touchdown, and Michigan scored 2 touchdowns with an offense that can't move the ball. Like, I'm liking where we're at this point. And then they get that touchdown before the half, and you're like, okay, cool, we get the ball coming back. But Michigan didn't show up in the second half. I think it's the 2 games in Michigan's in Harbaugh's coaching staff, they haven't showed up in the second half. It's both the games they've been, it's the only 2 games he's lost by more than 1 score, which was Ohio State in 2015. It was almost the exact same game as this one. Down a score going into half, completely got run over in the second half, and then there's this game today, and it looked like he gave up. So the saving grace there is 5 weeks after that last blowout loss to Ohio State in 15, they came out and beat an SEC champ Florida 42-13, 42-10, something like that, just as bad as this one was today against Florida. So they rallied the troops then, hoping there's some of that now.
This is the Michigan Football Report. Cam Rogers alongside James Yoder, your Michigan Football Insider. We are indeed presented by Game Time, a great app to get all those last-minute sports tickets, concert tickets, and more, up to 60% off. Head on to chatsports.com/tickets to learn more, or download the Game Time app today. And I'm telling you, you're going to get some pretty cheap tickets for that Rutgers game coming up for Michigan. So there you go. And James, we are, of course, bringing in commenters throughout the broadcast here. And a lot of people are fed up with this season. And I'll ask you this. Defense is so much about pride. And when you get knocked right at the beginning of the game with Saquon Barkley and that long touchdown, sometimes that can just put you off your heels and put you in a situation where you can't pick yourself back up. Was that a situation tonight with Michigan where they were just caught off guard by the offensive line for Penn State and Saquon Barkley? I mean, they weren't necessarily bullied on the offensive line per se, but they were hit hard.
I was surprised when that score was 14-0 and Penn State had the ball in Michigan territory. I just thought, okay, you're going to have to, I kind of was at peace with the loss. And I thought the defense fought back really well in the second quarter. And they gave up that touchdown late, which I think you can live with knowing you get the ball in the third quarter. But I think the sequence of plays that broke the camel's back was Michigan went 3-and-out right out of the gate in the third quarter, and then Penn State came out. And I'm going to look at my notes here, Cam. I got to find my phone, but I took some notes here. I believe it was that drive where they hit that pass to their tight end. I actually want to pull this up if I can, but Winovich. So let me see. It was it was Hamilton, number 5, made the unreal catch kind of down the sideline. And Michigan had a safety on him, and that just kind of broke the game open there. So it was that lucky catch on a third down for Penn State that McSorley dropped it right in there, and they score a couple plays later. I think that broke the back. All of a sudden, you're down 2 touchdowns. You don't have any confidence in your offense, and they just came out and stopped you, then stuck it right to you. And so after that, it was kind of like I'd almost just sat and reserved myself. My anger went down to a acceptance, and now I think there's the stages of grief. I'm kind of past acceptance now. I'm apologizing to people I've offended for my Michigan fanhood. I'm texting my Ohio State buddies and saying you were right. That's where I'm at. I'm going through the steps of grief at this point.
Right, I'm sure a lot of fans are in that same boat right now, James. And I will ask you about Drevno here. A lot of people throwing his name out there in the comment section and on the interwebs, if you will. Does he share the bulk of the blame for the offense right now? I mean, you mentioned it a couple weeks ago when you were here in the Chat Sports studios. There's just no creativity right now with this offense.
There was for a little bit, though. It's kind of weird. They pull out some of the stuff that I've been, where has this stuff been? But for like 3 drives, it was Eddie McDoom on a sweep, or it was a fake sweep and then hit a guy on the other side. And there was a couple plays that I gave him some credit for. Donovan Peoples-Jones dropped a bubble screen that looked like it could go for 15, 20 yards. But those scored the touchdowns, and then after that second touchdown, there was nothing out of the offense for the rest of the day that was creative. So Drevno and Pep Hamilton deserve a lot of the blame. There's one play in particular, Cam, that was so infuriating to me. I'm going to go back to my notes here. You can leave the camera on. That's fine. But here's what it was. It was third down in the third quarter. Michigan's down 2 touchdowns, 3rd and 8, okay? We don't have the play up in front of us because I just didn't tell you to prep it, but I couldn't believe this play. 3rd and 8, and Michigan has their guys running 20 yards downfield. I just couldn't comprehend where the offense, what was the offense trying to think? Do you think you can throw on 3rd and 8, 20 and 25-yard deep routes with 3 wide receivers went deep? And of course, you know what happened? He got sacked, and that was the end of the game at that point because Michigan's down 2 touchdowns. They got to give the ball back to Penn State. So I just didn't like what we saw all night kind of after that second touchdown from the offense. And so Tim Drevno, he's coaching, in my opinion, he's coaching for his job. I hate to say it. He's a nice guy. He's a family man. He's been with Harbaugh for a long time. But look, the offense relies on him, and then that rolls up to Harbaugh, and you know how kind of shit rolls downhill. So if Jim Harbaugh is kind of he's giving his coaching legacy to this offensive coaching staff. So I do think he kind of needs to push Drevno out the door, and that might be, hey, take an offensive coordinator position with another school, or maybe go back to the pros, potentially. You know, I know Tim Drevno wants a head coaching job bad, but it might not be a role that he wanted, which could have been like, Maryland's head coach is Michigan's former D coordinator. He's not going to get a job like that, which he maybe could have if they had a good year this year. It would be like at a lower level MAC school at best, if not like D1AA or FCES. It's CSBS, whatever it is now. Yeah.
Once again, folks, this is the Michigan Football Report presented by the Game Time app. Get those last-minute tickets for concerts, MLB playoffs, NFL, another slate coming up tomorrow, and so much more. Chatsports.com/tickets, or download the Game Time app yourself on Android and iOS. Get up to 60% off. It's a great deal. James, you are certainly going to find some deals at that Rutgers game next week, as I mentioned, with Michigan, but plenty of other deals that you can find on the app.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I was looking at Game Time right after the game to see what the Ohio State tickets were going for. It looks like they've already dropped like $100 a ticket. I'm not even joking. So if anybody wants to get like a little head start on the action, go to Game Time, buy Ohio State tickets if you want to spend your Thanksgiving weekend watching Michigan get beat like they did today, because that's what's going to happen. I'm sorry.
All right, James, before we wrap up here, I do want you to open up your crystal ball a little bit and project the rest of the season here for Michigan. Any shot at all to make any sort of playoff noise, or is it just done?
Well, of course, no playoff noise. Absolutely not. No chance of making even a Big Ten noise, I think is what you meant, but I'll give you a pass on that one. So it wasn't as ridiculous. My bad on that. But, no Big Ten noise either, because they can't beat Ohio State. Have you seen Ohio State? They're unbelievable right now, and Michigan's not going to have anything in the tank to beat them. So I've got to win against Rutgers. I've got to win against Minnesota because they're home. I could see them losing to Maryland. I mean, I could. So I think that one's 60-40 in the win percentage. And I give them about 15% chance to win against Wisconsin and maybe 10 to win against Ohio State. So I just think it's either 2-3 or 3-2 with a slight edge to 3-2 being the result. You finish 8-4. You go to a fourth, you're probably like the number 6 team in the Big Ten, according to the bowl results at that point. And so you're not even playing on New Year's Day or anything like that. You're going to where we're at Chat Sports. You're kind of playing in one of these bowls outside Dallas or something like that on the 28th of December against 7-5 Texas A&M team. That's what I see. And if they lose that one, we're 7-5, and then just 8-5 and just crying a river because you're at the same point after year 3 as Brady Hoke was.
Well, let's face it, for this point on for Michigan, the Big Ten is essentially the playoffs for them. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been the Michigan Football Report presented by Game Time. One more time, download that Game Time app to get up to 60% off all of those concert tickets, sporting events, and so much more. Chatsports.com/tickets will get you there as well. For James Yoder, your Michigan football insider.
Hey, Cam, really quick, before we sign off really quick.
Yeah.
Before we sign off, let's tell people about the podcast if we can. Sorry to interrupt you there, but go ahead and download the Michigan podcast. We're going to have all the highlights and everything. It's in the iTunes store. It's iOS only. You can go to chatsports.com, youtube.com/GoBlue. It'll drop you right in there. It's a video podcast, so if you want to see the highlights again, you can. But this whole show will be on there. We'll get Harbaugh's press conference on there. We'll talk to him on Monday. We'll get that in there. So if you want a video solution on the go for Michigan football to kind of, get those angry part, get those flames fired up again, like I think a lot of people have right now, go ahead and download our podcast, and you'll get to see all the great Michigan football coverage out there on the internet, including this show.
And certainly leave a review once you do watch them, and subscribe and download and so forth. So there you have it. James Yoder, your Michigan football insider. I am Cam Rogers. We'll see you next time.